So there's a popular term in the wellness community going around that your gut is your second brain. But how true is that? Hi, I'm Ryan and I'm not a scientist, and I truly don't know how important the gut is to overall health. Let's face it, there's a lot of quackery out there. But you know who does know? Gut microbiologist and registered dietitian Jesse Hoffman, who's dedicated her entire life to studying the gut. So I sat down with her to discuss everything you need to know about your belly. I'm sitting here with PhD Jesse Hoffman, as well as a registered dietitian. You have all the qualifications that I do not have. On your Instagram, you are just going at it. You just are not having any of this BS. You're fact only, and that's something I really respect about you in the scientific community and the wellness community, where there's so much craziness. Half the time I don't know what's real, and half the time I don't know if I need to go on a juice cleanse and really clean out my colon. I saw you post probably a few days ago. There's a saying now that your gut is your second brain. Now, I thought about that for a minute. Man, I mean, it kind of is, because I kind of go by my gut a lot, and my gut controls my eating. But at the same time, is that my brain telling me to do that, or is that my gut? And if it's my gut and my gut is a second brain, do I want to have like two brains going at it back and forth all the time? Explain to me your thoughts behind that term and if there's any realness to it.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of realness to that. Of course, in any instance, people take that and run with it and often run a little too far. Just kind of preface this whole talk like something that's very prevalent in the field of gut health and the gut microbiome is those people that take kind of the first little tidbits of any sort of scientific understanding and run with it. When it comes to our gut being like our second brain, there is a tie between our gut and our brain. So there is something called the gut-brain axis. There's several different components of the gut-brain axis. One of the main physical components being our gut is connected to our brain via the vagus nerve. So we do get some like impulses sent through that. We also have hormonal signaling that influences, our gut motility. And we also have our gut microbiome, which could be another component of the gut-brain axis, because our gut microbiome has been studied to produce certain molecules that may interact with our, brain chemistry. And the area is still super new. A lot of research is being done in that area, looking at things with neurodegeneration, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease and things like that. So there's definitely like a connection there. Is it fully fleshed out? No. A lot of us have experienced this connection. You get nervous about something. You feel that anxiety before a presentation or before a big talk or before, any big event. You feel that urgency in your bowels. That is because you do have that connection that's existing. So your gut is very much connected to your brain. It's just people like to take that term and run with it.
Gut health, whenever I meet with people that deal with functional medicine, try to peddle this gut health thing really, really strongly, and they talk about gut health and they kind of lump it into one big thing. But you posted something the other day that I thought was interesting, was that there's actually a difference between gut health and the gut microbiome. So could you briefly describe that difference for the viewers?
Yeah, so the term gut health is a term that's easy for me to use as like a researcher in the gut microbiome, but it's a term that I'm very wary about using because the wellness industry has taken it and kind of run with it and morphed it into what they want it to be. So gut health is not clearly defined. The way I would define gut health is the absence of any sort of conditions that are causing issues, any sort of, pain in the gut, regular bowel movements and things like that. The issue with gut health is people like to say like, eat this to promote gut health, eat this to do that, take this gut health supplement, but gut health is not a clearly defined term. And then the gut microbiome is the population of bacteria, yeast, viruses, things that live in our gastrointestinal tract. You can have a disturbance in the gut microbiome that may, we may call that like an unhealthy gut or bad gut health. It's not something that you can equate. It's very, in the post that I shared. So it was a post by Vitamin PhD. So Gabrielle Fondaro, who is an incredible resource. She was doing gut health research before it was cool. She shared this, parallel looking at the differences between gut health and the gut microbiome. And I just made the comment when I posted that they're related but not equated. So having a good quote unquote gut microbiome or a healthy microbiome does not necessarily mean you have good gut health. What's healthy for one person may not be healthy for another. And that goes the same for the gut.
So this whole dysbiosis stuff, could you kind of explain what gut dysbiosis is?
Yeah. So again, it's a term doesn't have like a clear-cut definition. So it's not something that you could go to the doctor and be diagnosed with dysbiosis.
Right.
Dysbiosis just really means it's kind of population of your gastrointestinal microbiome that just looks different from what a healthy control would look like. And so dysbiosis, what's healthy, what we deem like a normal gut microbiome, looks different throughout the world. Like a healthy person in the US that you would say had good gut health and a healthy microbiome, and you compare that to someone who's living in an Asian country, and their microbiome looks different, you would say that US is dysbiotic, or you would say that the other, one is dysbiotic. So it's a very loosely defined term that just basically means it's kind of just a step away from what a normal population might look like in a healthy control. What a lot of people suggest is that the healthy control would be yourself, free of any sort of conditions or disease. So what may be like dysbiosis in one person may not be dysbiosis in another, if that makes sense.
When it comes to knowing whether or not your gut is healthy, what are some key traits of an unhealthy gut in a person?
It's really going to depend on the person, but one of the best ways that I number one thing I talk to them about is, what is their poop like? How many times are you going to the bathroom? What's the formation of it? Is it loose, or is it hard, and you do have issues passing it? So being a GI focused dietitian, that's something you can't avoid and you can't not talk about, because our bowel movements tell a lot about what's going on in our GI tract. But then also just like constant bloating. I've made posts about this before, but not confusing a feeling of being full with bloat. Because feelings of fullness after you eat is normal. You're going to be normally distended when you eat a larger meal. And that's completely normal. And I think a lot of times people say, oh, I ate a big meal, I'm bloated. And bloat is really that production of gas, that physical discomfort, either in the upper GI or the lower GI. And so I think it's important to make that distinction. If you're having chronic gas, chronic bloating, and it's causing you physical pain and interfering with your daily life, that's when there's something to look at, either with a doctor and a dietitian, just something to kind of keep note of.
I experience these things myself. I don't want to get too graphic, but for a long time, I dealt with really bad gas for like several years. And it was to a point where I would go to the gym. I was working with my trainer, and I don't know why he didn't quit working with me. I must have paid him pretty well. I thought I was just like one of those people that unfortunately had a bad gas problem. But it turns out I was actually over excess eating fiber. I was having like so much fiber in my diet, like 80 grams of fiber. How should I be eating to support a healthy gut flora?
Yeah. So the preface is everyone's different, and kind of your story with fiber, one person can tolerate is too much for another. So there are some people, while I don't recommend it, most people cannot tolerate like 80 grams of fiber, but some people can. And there's certain countries and regions of Africa where their predominant intake are fibrous foods, and they can actually tolerate that. And they actually rely on that. And with the microbiome, they produce short chain fatty acids that then they use for energy. That are a large contributing source, where in the US that's not. Kind of very simplistically, what I recommend for overall, just good old GI health is a diet that is rich in fibrous foods, not too much, but rich in things like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes. Fermented dairy products are great if you can tolerate some dairy. And then there's even a place for, meats and things like that. A lot of meat gets a bad rap. Everything's in a balance. So, too much of anything can be bad. You can drink too much water and die of it. So it's, everything is in a balance. So in general, I just recommend that people focus on getting a diet that's very diverse and that is not super restrictive in any one area, because you have those different microbes that reside in your intestine, and not all of them can ferment and metabolize the same things. And the way microbes thrive is through fermentation and metabolism. That's their way that they metabolize the nutrients. And so by giving them a diverse kind of set of things that you're putting in, you're able to kind of help a lot of populations thrive. There's no evidence that you're helping like pathogens thrive by having a diverse diet and things like that. It tends to be very supportive of balancing out your gut microbiome.
Right. And that's something that I've talked about a lot just on my own page and stuff like that, is that diversity is the key to developing a good set of health, is having a good variety of food. and real food at that. So one thing I actually want to talk to you is I've heard that exercise can actually impact your gut health.
Yeah, it's going to be, again, it's individualized,
Right.
and it's also going to change with your training. So there is some evidence that exercise impacts the microbiome. Again, it's just very early. That area of research is not something that's like super well studied. We often see GI issues in runners and people undergoing high intensity interval training or, any sort of high intensity exercise. When we do exercise, our blood flow to our gut is diverted elsewhere, kind of that fight or flight, rest and digest kind of system. We don't need to be digesting food when our body perceives that we need to be moving and running away from something from a kind of an evolutionary perspective. So that can cause a lot of issues for people. So if you had food in your GI and blood flow is being diverted away, it can cause some physical irritation. You can cause some cramping. And even some runners that end up dealing with blood in their stools because of that physical kind of disruption. So exercise is good for your gut, but there's like a balance. Seems to be like low intensity exercise, like walking and things like that. You may see that it kind of stimulates your bowel movements because you're relaxing, you're getting your blood pumping, and that's not necessarily diverting all of your blood flow away. But when you get in that high intensity exercise, that's when it diverts away. And it's not to say that exercise is bad. It's to say that high performing athletes are people that are really focused on athletic performance and in their gut health are often going to have to do some things with their nutrition. They're going to have to play around with foods that they're eating. So not eating a lot of fats before working out because fats digest slowly, not eating a lot of fiber before working out because you don't need to have like a stomach full of fiber because that digests slowly, prioritizing carbs before a workout, things like that.
So another thing is like you see too, they're pushing the use of probiotics. That's my question with probiotics is firstly, like you explain like what a probiotic is. Should we be popping them probiotics or not popping them?
Yeah, so a probiotic is, the definition currently stands as like a live microorganism that you ingest that confers a benefit on host health and well-being. It's a microorganism that when you ingest it takes up residence in the gut. The kind of issue with that definition is we're now kind of learning that they may not actually have to be alive for them to confer a benefit on us, but that's kind of a tangent. So in general, they are, isolated quote unquote beneficial microbes that have been identified in our guts that we want to support and we want to kind of supplement into our GI. And there's tons of different probiotics on the market. And, when this research really first started, it was kind of like everyone should be taking a probiotic. Why not? Let's all just jump on and take a probiotic.
Right.
What we now know with the research is that not everyone may need to take a probiotic. If you have pretty much normal gut health and no indication of any sort of GI conditions like an inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, any sort of irritation of the GI or disturbance in your normal GI functions, you probably have a very normal and stable microbiome. So there are trillions of microbes that live in our guts.
Right.
And often these probiotics are in the billions. If there are even there's some that are in the millions.
So it's not even really making a dent. It's
a drop in the bucket. If a healthy person takes, a probiotic that's 50 to 80, billion colony forming units or CFUs, they might not see any change in their gut microflora. If you tested it. If someone had a disturbed gut microbiome where things were a little unbalanced, that might actually help. And so there's a great website called usprobioticguide.com that's very, evidence-based. It breaks down the evidence for certain probiotics in certain conditions, because that's what we're learning is that they're very specific. Can't just kind of throw like a kitchen sink probiotic and expect it to really do anything. The main conditions that are helped with probiotic supplementation are like inflammatory bowel disease, IBS like symptoms, so whether that's constipation or diarrhea in a person experiencing IBS symptoms, certain like antibiotic associated diarrhea or traveler's diarrhea, or C. diff infections like Clostridium difficile associated diarrhea. So that's a pretty bad bug that kind of we'll find in people after really heavy antibiotics use, and that one can kind of grow in the gut. So a lot of the indications for probiotics are for helping with kind of regularity and things like that in conditions where things might not be great. I'm always willing to change my mind, but there's currently not a lot of evidence that it really does anything for us. It's kind of just a drop in the bucket. And a lot of the research that was first done on probiotics, and is still done to this day, but is recognized that it's not perfect, is someone takes a probiotic and you collect a stool sample and you look at the population of bacteria in that stool sample and say that's the gut microbiome. Well, there was a study a few years ago that found that the probiotics people were taking were ending up in the stool, but that didn't mean that they were colonizing. They weren't actually colonizing the gut. They were just passing. Yeah. Which makes sense. And so now that's making us question a whole area of research where we were doing that. Because in humans, it's really hard to get those intestinal samples of the microbiome or samples in the gut, because it's not very invasive. But we're learning that that's a better indicator. And so that's kind of where we started seeing that probiotics may not be necessary for everyone.
Right. And this goes back again to everyone is different. Everybody has different needs. Their health at different states. They have different predispositions. They have different genetics. And so they require different things for their body. Now, this is only part one. Stay tuned for part two of the interview with Dr. Jesse Hoffman. I want to thank her for taking the time. All of her links, including her Instagram, are down in the description below. Please feel free to hit me up if you have any questions on my Instagram at Ryan Mitchell Brown. And I will see you in the next one.